Now let me remind you what's making it started this morning. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Lieutenant Walden Kane, and I'm the lead crime scene investigator with the Milton County Sheriff's Department.
And how long have you been working for the Milton County Sheriff's Department?
I've been working there for about 16 years now. I originally started out in patrol, then I worked my way into device, narcotics, homicide, and for the past 5 years, I've been the lead crime scene investigator.
And what are the qualifications of a lead crime scene investigator?
Well, you need to be an expert in things like blood splatter evidence, bullet trajectory, fingerprint comparisons, and ballistics.
And how did you become an expert in these subjects?
Well, a few years ago, our Sheriff John Brown decided to step more into the 21st century, and he chose me to participate in some training courses where I would become knowledgeable of these subjects.
And have you been able to implement any of this knowledge into your investigations?
Absolutely. In almost every case I worked on, I've done well with 200 fingerprint comparisons, and I've also testified in court.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to tender Lieutenant Walden Kane as an expert in the fields of fingerprint comparisons and ballistics.
Witness has no objection to this, Your Honor.
All right, he is admitted as an expert in both subjects.
Now I'm going to ask you about the events that happened on January 26th. Was a 911 call made that night?
Yes, at 8:13 p.m., I received a 911 call from dispatch reporting of somebody falling over the edge of the Millville parking garage.
And how did you respond to this call?
Well, I was there within 6 minutes.
When you arrived to the parking garage, where were you?
I arrived at the north entrance, which is where Bobby Bacalauleri and Leslie Kwan was located.
Well, let's talk about Mr. Bacalauleri first. When you arrived, what condition was he in?
Bobby Bacalauleri was deceased. He had a full wound in his right shoulder, scratches on his forearms, bloody knuckles, and dirt under his fingernails.
Were you ever able to determine the cause of death?
Yes, later from the medical examiner, we learned that the cause of death was blunt force trauma.
Now you mentioned Leslie Kwan before. Who was Mr. Kwan?
Leslie Kwan is a parking attendant who works for the Millville parking garage, and on the night of the incident, he happened to be working there, and he saw Bobby Bacalauleri fall in front of him.
You said he was working at the parking garage that night. Did you ask him about the security cameras in the garage?
Yes, I did, and unfortunately, the view that we're working did not actually capture what happened.
After talking to Mr. Kwan, what did you do?
Well, at that point, I looked around the scene to see maybe something had fallen along with Bobby Bacalauleri, and at that point, I found a gun about 10 feet away in some bushes.
And after finding this gun, what did you do?
I photographed it and tagged it for evidence.
And after tagging it for evidence, what did you do?
Well, at that point, I went to the top level of the parking deck to further my investigation.
And when you got to the top of the deck, what was the first thing that you noticed?
Well, I noticed that it was fairly well lit, but not lit well enough to accurately process a crime scene.
Did you attempt to get any other source of light?
Yes, I did. I asked for some portable lights to maybe help illuminate the scene, but unfortunately, many of the portable lights that we had were being used to help direct traffic across the street at a concert.
So how did you proceed with your investigation?
Well, I looked around for evidence, and I marked all the evidence that I found. I put up pop-up tents to preserve the scene, as well as draw a diagram. And I also found blood there, which I swallowed.
After preserving the scene, what did you do?
Well, I asked for two of my uniformed officers to secure the area, and I headed back down to the bottom level, which was when Ronnie Bacalauleri approached me.
And what did you learn from Miss Bacalauleri?
Well, I learned from Ronnie that she was on the top level of the deck during an incident, and she saw the defendant push Bobby Bacalauleri off of the Millville parking garage.
And after talking to Miss Bacalauleri, what did you do?
Well, at that point, I got the gun that I previously found and brought it back to the station to run tests on it.
And what test did you run on it?
Well, I ran, after I found a fingerprint on the gun, I ran it through the APHIS system, which is our automatic fingerprint identification system, and it didn't find a match. So I went to one of our more old school manual methods, which involved using a microscope.
Well, as an expert in fingerprint comparisons, can you please explain this manual method of matching fingerprints to the jury?
Well, what we do is we take a fingerprint and then we look under it with a microscope to find unique points to match, and we compare them, and we do find matches.
And were you able to find a match that night?
Yes, we found a positive match on the fingerprint on the top slide that matched the defendant. We only found it on the top slide because the grip and the trigger were designed so that it didn't appear on the screen.
And did you make a report of your findings?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, at this time I'm approaching opposing counsel with what has been previously marked as Exhibit 5. Now, do you recognize this document?
Yes, this is a fingerprint report that I filed for the defendant.
And does this document fairly and accurately depict the fingerprint report that you filed?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to tender an Exhibit 5. Its accuracy and authenticity have been stipulated.
Any objection?
Witness has no objection to this item, Your Honor.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
Now, who did you say you matched this fingerprint to?
The defendant.
Great! And after matching this fingerprint, what did you do?
Well, at that point, I sent two of my officers to come ask the defendant to come in for an interview.
And did she come in for questioning?
Yes, she did.
And did you conduct this interview?
I did.
And was a transcript of this interview made?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time I'm approaching opposing counsel with what has been previously marked as Exhibit 8. May I finish the Now, do you recognize this document?
Yes, this is a transcript of the interview that I had with the defendant on January 27th, 11 midnight.
And does this document fairly and accurately depict the transcript of the interview you had with your defendant?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, this time I would like to tender in Exhibit 8. Its accuracy and authenticity have been stipulated.
Any objection to Exhibit 8?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense objects to this exhibit on grounds of hearsay.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. The statements made by Lieutenant Kane are not, in fact, accurate statements often for the truth of the matter. They are simply questions, not statements, and therefore they are not hearsay. And the statements made by the defendant, Samantha Pike, are an exception to the hearsay rule under 802D1, party opponent.
That 802D1?
Yes, Your Honor.
May I respond?
You may.
The defense believes that the content of the questions that Lieutenant Kane asked will be used for the truth of the matter asserted today in court.
May I respond, Your Honor?
One more response.
But once again, the statements made by Lieutenant Kane, they're not statements, they are questions.
Well, I'm going to admit it not on the basis of your position, but on the basis that it is admissible under 801D1.
Now, Lieutenant Kane, during this interview with the defendant, did she lie to you?
Yes, she did. The defendant lied to me about where she was, who can testify as to where she was, and any previous knowledge of Bobby Bachler.
Was she cooperative during this interview?
No, not at all. The defendant was very rude. She was very sarcastic. She wouldn't allow me to swab her hands for gunshot residue. When I mentioned her mother, she yelled at me, and eventually she just got up and left.
And after this interview, what did you do?
Pardon?
After this interview, what did you do?
Well, the next morning, I returned to the crime scene at around 7:20 to take photographs, and they appeared much better than the ones I tried taking the night before.
Your Honor, at this time, I'm approaching opposing counsel with what has been previously marked as Exhibit 4. May I finish the
You may.
Now, do you recognize these documents?
Yes, these are photographs that I took from the crime scene on January 26th and 27th.
And do these documents fairly and accurately depict the photographs you took on January 26th and 27th?
Yes, they do.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to tender in Exhibit 4, letters A through O. Their accuracy and authenticity have been stipulated.
Any objection?
No objection.
There are none.
And I ask that the witness be able to step down to the bench for the purpose of this time.
That's fine.
Commissioner,
You may.
Now, Lieutenant Kane, did you take any of these photographs on January 26th?
Yes, I did. Picture C and picture D.
Now, were the rest of the photos taken on January 27th?
Yes, they were.
And can you please walk us through the first photograph that you took?
I took photographs of picture A and picture D, and they show where Bobby Bachler Larry had fallen the night before.
And did you return to the top deck that night?
Yes, I did.
And did you take photographs?
Yes, over towards the elevator shaft, I took pictures E and F, as well as pictures G and H. And in picture G, it shows evidence marker 5, 6, and 10. It shows shell casing number 2, a cigarette butt, and a Coke bottle respectively.
And were you able to pull any DNA off of any of this evidence?
Yes, off of the cigarette butt, I found DNA that matched to Sean Luke.
And what could you conclude from the cigarette butt?
Well, I concluded the night before that it had been smoked a few hours before I got there.
After going to the elevator shaft, where did you go?
I went over towards the railing, which is where I took photographs I and J, where they show shell casing number 1 and blood drops, where they are shown as evidence marker 2 and evidence marker 3.
And were you able to find a fingerprint on the shell casing?
Yes, I did. I found a partial fingerprint match that also matched Sean's boot.
And who did this blood belong to?
Blood shown in picture J belonged to Bobby Bachler.
Now, did you find anything else by the way?
Yes, I did. I found 3 fingerprints, which I later matched to Bobby Bachler.
And after going to the railing, where did you go?
I went over to the south stairwell, which is where I took pictures M and N, where they show evidence marker 9, which shows blood that I later matched to the defendant.
Thank you. May we see?
Now, after processing the crime scene, did you make an arrest?
Yes, I arrested the defendant.
And did you bring the defendant in for processing?
Yes, I brought him in for processing, which involves doing a cheek swab and running a gunshot residue test.
And what was the result of this gunshot residue test?
The test came back negative, although it wasn't very surprising. Semi-automatic weapons usually don't have that much gunshot residue anyways.
While you were processing the defendant, did you notice anything unusual about him?
Yes, the defendant had dark circles under her eyes and scratches on her forearm. When you worked in my field long enough, it obviously inferred that she'd been in some sort of altercation.
Objection, Your Honor. Witness has a lack of foundation to make this conclusion. He had laid further foundation to say that she happened to involve besides scratches or dark circles under her eyes. That may be admissible, but at this time I don't believe that he has a foundation for it.
Your Honor, he has 16 years of training in the fields, in various fields in the Milton County Sheriff's Department. After this many years, I think he has the knowledge to make this justification.
I don't think that his expertise really covers the subject of this question and the sustained objection.
Yes, sir. Now, after arresting the defendant, was your investigation over?
No, at that point, I still had to run ballistic tests on the gun and conduct a few more interviews.
And what were the results of these ballistic tests?
We learned that the gun used in the crime was used a few months ago in another shooting.
And who did you interview?
I interviewed Sean LaBouche and Kelly Nicholson.
And what did you learn from Mr. LaBouche?
Well, I learned from Sean LaBouche that on the night of the incident, he was at a 7:30 showing of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake.
Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay under Rule 801, and therefore admissible under Rule 802. This is an out-of-court statement being used in court for the truth of the matter asserted, and the defense will be disputing the truth of this statement.
Your Honor, under Rule 803, under the exception to hearsay under Rule 803.3, this goes to the then existing mental, physical, and emotional state of Sean LaBouche, which the witness can testify to. Moreover, he is conducting his investigation, and therefore we need to explore all possibilities that all the witnesses saw and all the information that he learned from his interviews.
I don't believe that this is an exception to the hearsay rule, and I sustain the objection.
Did you learn anything else from Mr. LaBouche?
Yes, I learned that he was the one who usually loaded the gun for body molecular, which would explain his fingerprints being on the shell casing that kind of scene of the crime.
Did you interview anybody else in your investigation?
Yes, actually, Kelly McNulty came to me, and while I appreciate what he had to say, what he said was not really helpful at all. He first gave some pictures of the crime scene, but none of them were taken the day of the incident. They were all previous photos, and Kelly McNulty did not actually see who pushed Bobby Montevallari over the wall of the parking garage, which would make him not an eyewitness.
By this point, was all the evidence processed?
Yes.
Were all the interviews conducted?
Yes.
So what was your reasoning for arresting the defendant?
Well, I had an eyewitness testimony from Ronnie Montevallari, which in and of itself is enough to make an arrest. But I also had the fact that his fingerprints were found at the scene of the crime, and the fact that he lied to me in our interview, which helped further justify my arrest.
Did any of the evidence you received after processing not justify your arrest?
No.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Lieutenant Kane, you think that cement pipe is a little like drug pressure, correct?
No.
You stated this morning.
Yes, I did.
You swear that everything in it was true and accurate to the best of your abilities?
Yes.
That you had nothing further to add?
No.
Maybe you aligned with the statement.
Your Honor, objection. The proper foundation for this document has not been laid.
Your Honor, this is the witness affidavit.
I believe he's acknowledged in his statement.
Yes, but Your Honor, may I respond?
He has acknowledged in his statement, so he's got to be the proper foundation for the argument. What is
He's not going through the proper procedure for impeachment, and therefore I ask him to lay that foundation and go through the proper procedure.
Can you tell me specifically what is lacking in the presentation?
Yes, Your Honor. He must approach the witness, identify the document, identify his signature, and identify that he has reviewed this statement in court.
I can show the witness the statement.
That's right. Why don't you do that? But I believe that the witness has acknowledged that he gave the statement this morning, and that's true. Go ahead and show the witness the statement.
Lieutenant Kane, Is this your signature?
Yes, it is.
And show it to opposing counsel.
Let me read to you starting at line 30, statement. That's not exactly a graded name for a game of people who drove across the track. What do you expect from little light truck pushers? To don't get back to clarify that you were in fact talking about this. Hype has been up to no good for a while, and my guys and guys were building a case on her as the leader of one of the local games across the tracks group. That's not exactly a graded name for a game of people who move across the tracks. But what can you expect from little light truck pushers? I read that correctly, didn't I?
Yes.
What's in the cane, you think that with Samantha locked up, with Bobby back when they were dead, that's two for the price of one. Correct?
When I said that, I meant that it would be better to keep crime off the street. What I meant to say is that I was happy that we had loan shark on, which would further eliminate more crime in our city, and that we had a murderer off the street as well.
Regardless of what you meant to say, that's what you did say.
This is
Now, this isn't the first time you said correct, that you charged Ms. Pike for a crime.
no, I have not charged Samantha Pike for any other crime.
Well, several months ago, there was a game shoot, correct?
Correct.
And you tried really hard to connect Pike to that shooting.
No, my license is licensed.
You gave statements, correct?
Yes.
Promises true and accurate, that you have nothing further to add.
Yes.
Let me read you another line. I was able to determine through ballistics testing later in the week that the exact same gun was used by a member of the Across the Tracks crew to shooting several months ago. I remember how hard we tried to connect Pike to that shooting, but she claimed to have taken her mom to the doctor that day. Couldn't make any charges state for that. Thought to myself, I won't get fooled again, not by this one. I read that correctly.
Yes.
Just to review that again, she gave you an alibi.
Yes.
Because of that, you were not able to meet any charges state.
No, I did not make any charges given.
You were pretty mad about that.
I wouldn't say that.
You were mad enough to think to yourself, I won't get fooled again by this little punk.
Yes, that's what I said.
Now let's talk about investigating the cases. Like I said on the record, remember items of evidence. There was the .32 caliber handgun,
Yes.
2 bullet shell casings,
Correct.
blood splatter on both ends of parking deck,
Yes.
and there were 2 bullet shell casings.
Yes.
Now, after you realized you couldn't photograph them well enough, you decided to leave the evidence overnight for 11 hours.
Yes, I did, and I placed pop-up tents to preserve them and make sure nothing would happen.
Now, on your way out, you were approached by Ronnie Backville.
Yes.
Ronnie told you that she saw it clear as day, Samantha Pike pushed your brother off their apartment.
Correct.
Now, later on, it turned out that you confronted her with the fact that she had gotten out of her car, even though she said she hadn't, and she admitted to you that her memory of the event was foggy, correct?
Yes, she did, but I think she remembered who pushed her brother off the wall, or over the wall of the apartment there.
Yes, she admitted her memory of the event was foggy.
Yes.
Regardless, after that, you decided to go back to the station with that handgun, correct?
Yes, as any investigator would.
You found one latent fingerprint on the slide of the gun.
Yes, we searched all around the gun to find more fingerprints, but the way the grip is designed, we couldn't pull any fingerprints from it.
You found one fingerprint, the right green finger,
Correct.
and it was on the slide of the gun.
Yes.
It wasn't on the trigger,
No.
like you said, it wasn't on the grip,
No.
on the slide. Now, you ran it through the fingerprint identification system, like you
Yes.
said,
Already just
and it didn't have any match.
No, it did not. So we went to our older manual method that all using microscope.
Right, you went to your police files and you dug out Samantha Pike's fingerprint.
Yes, because I had an eyewitness testimony, so that was my
Your microscope.
Objection, Your Honor, I ask that opposing counsel let my witness finish his answer before the right is necessary.
Sustain. Don't write it.
As I was saying, I went and got the fingerprint because I had the eyewitness testimony, and that was my obvious lead on crime.
That was the only fingerprint you ever reviewed on you.
Yes.
Now, after you arrested Snoop Pike, you gave her a gunshot rescue swab test, correct?
Yes, and as I said, it came back negative, but that really didn't surprise me. She could have easily washed her hands, and as I said earlier, semi-automatic weapons really don't leave much gunshot residue anyways.
The results were negative for hands.
Yes.
At that point, some more evidence came in, correct?
Can you be a little more specific?
Some more evidence came in the process, correct?
Yes.
Those 2 bullet shell cases came back.
Yes.
It turned out there's a fingerprint on one.
A partial fingerprint match, yes.
And that fingerprint came back to a person named Sean LaRue.
Correct, and as I said, Sean was usually the one who loaded the gun for Bobby, which would explain his fingerprint being on the shell casing.
And right beside that shell casing, there had been a cigarette butt.
Yes.
There was DNA evidence on the cigarette butt.
Yes.
That DNA evidence came back to Sean LaRue.
Correct.
Now, Sean LaRue had far more convictions than you can count, correct?
Yes.
So you figured you ought to bring him into question.
Yes, and I did.
He told you that he was at a movie that night.
Yes, he was. He was at the 7:30 showing of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, as I said earlier.
And you asked him if he could confirm that, correct?
I did.
You asked him if he could produce a ticket stub.
Yes.
He wasn't able to.
No.
You asked him if he could produce a witness.
Yes.
He wasn't able to.
No.
You left it at that.
Correct.
You didn't look further into the matter at all.
No.
In fact, like you said, it didn't even matter.
No, I had the person who committed the crime.
It didn't matter to you. You don't know which case was in the game. You had to man the fight.
But I did.
Nothing broken.
You regret?
Yes, ma'am. Now, opposing counsel talked to you about the cigarette butt you found at the crime scene. What could you conclude about the cigarette butt?
Well, as I said earlier, I concluded that it had been smoked hours before I got here.
Thank you. Next question, Joe.
You stay there.